The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, Dan Hinman, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here if you're ready.
I'm ready. Sounds great.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. I'm really excited on a couple of different levels. One is I'm not actually presenting the webinar. I'm just presenting the speaker and the subject. So that's exciting to me. And the second thing I'm excited about is that we've got a terrific speaker and thinker coming to you today in the form of Dan Hinman. And I'll introduce Dan to you in a moment. But I'm Dan Dunlop. I'm president of Jennings. We're a healthcare marketing and audience engagement firm based in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And one of the things we work on is building online communities and online engagement for healthcare organizations across the country. And we partner with Dan Hinman on that. So it's fitting that we're doing this webinar together today. If you have questions that come up throughout the webinar, please send them in through the chat feature. And at the end, we'll open it up to question and answers. Dan has a really good schedule built out for today's webinar, so there should be plenty of time to ask questions at the end. So please feel free, though, to send in your questions through the chat, and I'll then relay them to Dan. The hashtag, Dan and I have set up a hashtag for this webinar, and we're using it's hashtag patient communities, plural. So hashtag patient communities. And Dan and I have already been tweeting about the webinar leading up to this. So please feel free to join us and tweet along. We'd love to see your tweets after the fact. And as Dan's speaking, I'll be following the Twitter feed. So I look forward to hearing your comments and your reactions as we go along. And thank you in advance for your tweets. Dan and I are both very active on Twitter and welcome your engagement there. So one of the things that led to the webinar today and to our subject matter is our interest in online communities as a tool for engaging audiences for healthcare organizations. And as we have watched the trends in healthcare, one of the things that has frustrated me has been our slowness to change. You know, we just haven't been in a hurry to adapt to changes within the healthcare environment and changes that consumers are experiencing in the world of communications and how they communicate. You know, typically the way we as healthcare organizations, hospitals, health systems, physician practices, the way we communicate with consumers is we spew content at them. We market, we advertise, we talk about services and service lines and specialties, and we literally spew this content in their direction. And that is just not an effective way to engage consumers. Frankly, consumers most of the time don't want to think about what we're talking about. They don't want to think about healthcare. So we're spewing content, we're spending lots of money doing it, and it's something consumers really don't care much about until they're at that point where their hip hurts and they need a hip replacement, and then they go online and start searching for information. So we think a much more effective way to communicate with consumers is to create community, to change healthcare marketing from just typical spewing content to truly engaging consumers in conversations by creating these niche communities of shared interest. And the more niche they become, the more effective they become. So just to use a very simple example with Facebook, if a woman is dealing with pelvic health issues, is she going to want to go on your Facebook page and talk about pelvic health? Or would she be more likely to go to a smaller group that you've created, maybe a private Facebook group that is just dedicated to pelvic health issues? And you can make the same case for a bariatrics group, for people who are interested in weight loss surgery, for different types of cancer groups and so on. And all you have to do is look at the success of these online communities like Patients Like Me, Inspire.com, and see, you know, the millions of patients and family members who are flocking to these communities to find other people who are going through the same thing they're going through, so that they can share ideas, they can commiserate, they can share information and be empowered. So communities are a really powerful way to engage consumers. And Dan and I both believe that this is the direction healthcare marketing is going, that really it's going to be our role as healthcare marketer is going to be that of a community builder rather than somebody simply generating and distributing content to audiences. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Dan Hinman and let Dan take it the rest of the way for this presentation. Dan, for those of you who don't know him, he's been providing advertising, marketing, and public relations solutions for clients for more than 3 decades. In 2010, he started his firm, Hive Strategies, and his goal was to help health systems create HIPAA-compliant online communities like the ones I was talking about for better health, lower costs, and greater patient engagement. In this work, Dan partners with my firm, Jennings, and with Care Hubs to provide turnkey online community solutions. Care Hub's community software clients include some names you'll definitely recognize, like Mayo Clinic, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Seattle Children's Hospital, Arnold Palmer Hospital for Children, and more. Dan is a popular speaker at healthcare conferences. I myself have seen him speak at conferences, and he's phenomenal. He's a member of the Social Media Health Network, a member of the External Advisory Board of Mayo Clinic Center for Social Media, and a contributor to Reagan's Healthcare Newsfeed. He's an all-around great guy, and I'm honored to have him here presenting today and look forward to sitting here with you and sharing his presentation. So Dan, take it away.
Hey, Dan, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for framing this discussion today in such a great way. We really are going through some incredible changes in healthcare, as all of you know, but also in healthcare marketing to adapt to what's coming. And I think Dan's done an excellent job of talking about the value of return on community in healthcare. He's mentioned that some of their very many different kinds of communities that are out there already, but some of these communities include, like, for weight loss surgical patients, or for new moms, or breast cancer patients, or for caregivers. They're for parents of kids who are sick, or for people who are diabetic and who need to manage their diabetes better through a community that they can be part of. These communities also help people who are struggling with infertility or have rare diseases, and some of them even are set up to help manage clinical trials. So there's so many different kinds of patient communities available today, and so many different ways in which you, in your hospital or health system, can reach out to patients by identifying the need. Simply said, these communities are really good for patients. The communities that we help create, they provide peer-to-peer support between patients. They can provide accurate, useful information. They can give patients access to experts in the field. All those things are really great for patients, but it's also great for the health system because you have an opportunity to engage these patients in ways that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. So there's a lot of talk now about patient engagement strategies in healthcare. This is a powerful way through online communities to engage with patients, to improve processes, and to actually boost patient satisfaction. If you do these right, you can reduce readmissions for some of your patients. You can build loyalty to the community and to your health system. And you can also, and all of these things lead to increased revenues for the system. So there's so many benefits. At the same time, though, we know that you would are facing major hurdles in marketing. We're very aware that everybody is stretched to the max in healthcare and in healthcare marketing, that time is an issue and budgets are always an issue. And then you have the question of, well, this is a new idea. What if it doesn't work? So there's a kind of a fear of failure that can surround these online communities. And then it can be a challenge to get executive buy-in and also clinical buy-in to a community. A lot of people don't understand what the value is or how it could help or why it's so important. And so all of these things can be considered hurdles in establishing these online communities. For that reason, we recommend that you don't take a broad system-wide approach to online communities, but you develop a community that pertains to a very specific niche in your hospital. So backing again to the idea of, if you provide infertility services, what a perfect place for an online community where men and women, moms and dads who are struggling with this, can get together in a community and get support both before and after treatment, weight loss surgery, diabetes patients. All of these are opportunities for you to identify a niche that you can start with your first communities in your hospital or health system. And then what we have found as we've introduced this in other hospitals is when the first community has great success, then others want to duplicate it. And so they say, wow, we would like that community in our area to provide better support for our patients and improve satisfaction and outcomes and also drive revenues. And so can be a really great way to begin the concept of community within your organization. The tech firm Gartner says that without planning and management, you should be prepared for your community to fail. And so one of the big mistakes that hospitals and health systems and others make is an if you build it, they will come mentality. And if you approach it that way, you're going to end up with this. It's a ghost town. It's a community that was developed that nobody cares about and nobody comes to and nobody uses. And so the exciting thing that we're going to talk about today are really the steps to avoid failure and create thriving online patient communities. And I'm excited to give you some real practical ideas that you'll be able to apply as you think about this in a way that really will make you or will help you set up a successful community that really does thrive and meets the needs of the objectives that you have if you follow some certain key principles. So really the first thing to ask when you consider an online community is, what's my problem? What is my problem that this community is going to solve? You need to really take some time and drill down deep with that. So, for example, do you want to increase the number of deliveries in your birthing center? Well, could an online community help accomplish that? And if so, what would it be like? Do you need to help your surgical weight loss patients make the behavioral changes that are essential for them to continue to maintain their weight loss? Or to help them as they're leading up to their surgery to do the things they need to qualify for that surgery? What if you identified the problem that maybe you're a children's hospital and you have a desire to connect the families of these children more strongly to your institution and to your foundation so that they're more likely to give down the road. Whatever your marketing challenge is or the problem that you face, the first step is to identify that problem as specifically as you can. And so number one would be, what is your problem? And then the second question really to ask yourself is, who cares? You can develop a community that you think your patients will flock to, but if you haven't figured out who really cares about that beyond yourself, then your community won't be successful. It's like what Dan referred to earlier. As healthcare, we're so used to just driving messages out to people, the messages about us, the things that we feel passionate about or that are important. But the thing we need to really identify and understand here with a community is, does it really matter to the patient? And so the best way to figure that out is to start with some really critical, essential research. And that, number one, would be to explore the competition. By this I mean not only what services do hospitals in your market provide, but also, as importantly, is what other online patient communities are already out there. This is really a critical question from the beginning because people get invested in their online communities. And if the patients that you're trying to pull into your community are already engaged somewhere else, then you need to know that up front. And you need to find out where they're engaged, how and when, and whether your community is going to provide a better benefit or not. And we'll go into some real detail about how to do that in just a minute. The real way to do it, we'll get to it right now, is to start by interviewing 20 to 30 potential community members. So number one that you're going to do as part of the interview is you're going to identify who do I think right now would want to be part of this community. Develop a list of 20 to 30 people and then conduct interviews with them to find out where they are and what they need and if what you're thinking of even fits. So you might approach them in this way. I wrote a blog post a couple of weeks ago titled, "Why Doesn't Every Weight Loss Surgical Service in America Have an Online Patient Community?" I think that is a slam dunk, a place where patients really need support over a long period of time in a number of ways, are emotionally involved in that, and value a community of people who have been through what they've been through to support each other. And so, for example, if you were deciding to start a community for weight loss surgical patients, then here's how you would approach this in your interview situation with these potential 20 to 30 patients. You're going to identify, of course, somebody who's a candidate for your weight loss surgery, and then you're going to sit down with them and say something like this: "We're considering starting an online community for weight loss surgery patients. Would be a private site that you could log into. There you could have conversations with other people preparing for their weight loss surgery or who have had the surgery. There you can share advice, give support, ask questions, or just say how you're feeling or what you're struggling with. You could also get current, accurate information about procedures, diet, exercise, side effects, and you could ask our counselor or dietitian questions." So that kind of explains to them what you have in mind for the community. Then you just start asking a series of questions. Are you aware of other communities like these? Do you belong to any? If the answer is yes, then here's your opportunity to dig deeper, to ask the follow-up questions. So it's important to find out if there are existing communities that they may already be a part of. Does this sound like a community that you would want to be a part of? Why or why not? If the answer is no, that is incredibly valuable information to you. Why wouldn't they want to be involved? What do they see as the difficulties with a community like this, or the reason why they wouldn't want to participate at all? What else would you like to see in this community beyond what we've mentioned already? If you were designing a community like this, what would that be like? What is your dream community? What would you hope to gain from such an online community? How often would you visit the community? How long would you stay? Why would you come? Would you come to help others? Would you want to receive help yourself? Would you come to get information? Would you want to come to just make new friends, to ask questions, or just to lurk, just to see what other people are talking about? So there, I've got a list of 20 questions that I'll be sending out to all of you later today that you can ask in these interviews with these patients as part of this really essential research, so that you can get the deep information that you need to really make sure that this community meets in a really significant way the patient needs. There are specific ways to engage patients and to bring them back. And it's the process of bringing them back into the community that helps them eventually develop a habit. And this is an area where you're going to begin to understand what those triggers are that are going to be important to them once you establish a community to bring them back. I cannot overstate the value of these 20 to 30 patient interviews, in person or on phone. There also is a place for focus group interviews where you can get a group together and begin that process of them interacting actually in a group setting. But the one-on-ones are going to be really your most effective way to get the information that you need. The next type of interview that you're going to do is with the internal stakeholders, because it's essential from the beginning that you know if you have executive buy-in and stakeholder buy-in. And it's not just the CEO level or the marketing director level, but there is also a strong clinical piece in this, because you want to have the clinical people in your organization referring patients to your community throughout their treatment process. And if they don't believe in it or support it, then you're going to have a much more difficult time engaging the patients up front and getting them enrolled into the community. So your internal stakeholders are going to be the executives that need to support it, and also management, but also the clinical people who are involved. So you go through a process of educating them about the community and what it will do, how it can benefit patients, and how can they participate. Now you want to identify and confirm your resources. So the key resources for establishing a community, of course, are people, time, and money. And so it's essential up front that you understand what all of that involves. Who would need to be involved with the community? How much time is it going to take? And what is the cost associated with it? As you're going through, you're going to want to cost out the main key elements. What is the expense of developing my strategy, my plan? What about the software that we're going to use? How much money is involved with that? What is the investment to launch and then to manage the community? This is an important time to talk about the value of a community manager. Dan wrote a blog post a month or two ago comparing two of their communities, one that was managed and one that was not, and showed a significant increase in activity through community management. We don't know of a single patient community that has survived without an active community manager of some level. And that doesn't need to be full-time. That can be quarter-time or that can be half-time, but there needs to be someone assigned to be a community manager. That role is essential to engaging people in the community and building the interest, some specific skills. Also, it's essential that a clinical person or an expert of some kind be involved in the community. That again can be just very much a part-time thing, maybe a 0.25 of an FTE, or maybe even someone who's already involved. For instance, a bariatric program that has a nutritionist who's really involved in the program, who then also helps give expert advice within the online community. That's a nice combination of a community manager and an expert who can be involved as well. You need to consider those as part of your resources that you'll need as you're identifying and confirming really if you're completely committed to those investments. So through this process, you now have developed your strategic roadmap. You've answered the question why. Why are you establishing a community? What specific problem does it solve? You now are finding out who. You've identified who. Who exactly is the target for this community? Is it male? Is it female? What age? What gender? What conditions? What interests? All those things came out of your interviews with those 20 to 30 potential members of your community. Who is your competition? So that's an essential thing to understand up front, of course, is what else is going on out there that we need to understand before we establish our community. Have the key people bought into the community, your executives, your clinical folks, and then do we have the resources? Are we committed to the resources to really make this community work? So these are the 5 things you must know before you launch an online patient community. So let's talk for just a minute about the rewards, because going back to the hurdles, we identified that there can be difficulties with time, with money, with budget, with fear of the unknown, people uncomfortable with the whole idea of online communities. But if we step back for a moment and measure that against the rewards, it really is enormous. Dan made the rewards really are enormous. Dan made the point early on that healthcare marketing is changing. Patients and consumers are driving what's going on now in healthcare, and an important way to engage with them in the whole process is through online communities. It gives them a forum for participation that is different and better than any of the other options out there right now. In addition, it gives us a chance to really focus on patient engagement. And then the third great advantage is the opportunity to provide outstanding support, encouragement, comfort to patients as they go through very difficult times. All of this leads to increased revenue for the organization as patient loyalty thrives. So in our organization, Dan mentioned our partnership, which is Hive Strategies, Care Hubs, and Jennings. We pay our clients through a strategy here that begins with Discover, which we've just talked about today, that whole discovery process. Then the installation of the software, which goes on a secure server in the cloud and is HIPAA compliant and provides that safe, secure, private environment to have these discussions. We take clients through this specific launch process where there are some very strategic steps to begin to get patients engaged and more involved in the community and build it. And then the fourth stage is the management stage, which Dan and his team are really expert at helping to manage these communities once they're established. Those are the key messages for success in building online communities. And so now I'll turn it back to Dan to moderate some of your questions.
Great, thanks, Dan. That was terrific, and I've been monitoring the Twitter feed while you've been doing your talk. And I wanted to add one thing before we get to the questions, and that is, I guess, reinforcing what you've already said, which is you should not enter the world of online patient communities lightly. There is always more work involved, more strategy involved than people assume up front. These are, to maintain a vibrant, active community takes not only a community manager, but really a marketing effort around the community using traditional media marketing tools as well as digital tools. So, I mean, it is a complex thing, and it is an area of specialty to jump into to really start and launch successfully and then maintain a vibrant community like all of us would want. So I think you gave great advice, Dan, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for saying that. And the thing I would add then too is the key point that these are not 6-month, 12-month efforts. You are building a community here for the long term. And that includes a really interesting benefit of down the road, we have no idea how valuable these communities will be. We know today exactly what they can accomplish and how and why, but as we build communities, I believe there will be applications and benefits to health systems that we're not even aware of today that will really be essential for hospitals down the road.
Terrific. And Dan, the first question I have is from Max Lieberman, who's on the webinar today. And Max actually commented on this via Twitter. And he asked about the challenge, he was posing this challenge that he sees in not only finding the right subject matter expert for your community, or experts plural, but finding those who are also really skilled in the area of social media. So how would you respond to that, Dan? That what if I can find, for instance, what if I'm doing a bariatrics community and I can find a physician who's a bariatric surgeon who's willing to donate their time to the effort, but they're not a social media rock star? How do you handle that? What's your advice on that?
Right. I think there really are two skills here. One is you need a community manager, first of all, who is skilled in social media type engagement, good at asking questions, involving people, engaging the community in problem solving, stirring up interest in various topics, especially in the early days of the community. That's really essential. These people do not have to be necessarily healthcare savvy, although it helps if you can find people who are. But the greater skill is this skill of being able to engage and encourage and motivate and understand part of the psychosocial aspects of the community. Then you need the clinicians as well. And so I see the community manager as being the key mover and shaker in the community, with the clinician backing up and providing a good level of support. But it's something that the doctor or the nurse or the nutritionist can do in much less time a day than a community manager would require.
And Dan, the community manager, if they have their list of resources and they know who their subject matter experts are, they can actually reach out, because they're monitoring the site 24/7. So when there is a question or there is something that needs to be addressed by that expert, they can reach out to that expert and get the kind of feedback that they need and make sure that that is communicated within the community.
Perfect. Yeah, good point, and exactly right.
You know, one of the analogies I always make, because I think the community manager is so important. I always say the community manager is like someone who is great at throwing parties, except they're throwing their party using digital media online, and social networks. And if you think about throwing a party and how much you have to work when you're throwing a party, say you're having a dinner party at your home, and how much work that is, from putting together the guest list, which is deciding who to invite, because you want people who are going to get along and have conversation. And then at your role as the host or hostess, you're greeting people when they come to the door, you're making introductions, you're facilitating conversations, you're filling in the lulls. You know how there are those awkward moments where no one's talking, and as the host or as the community manager, you're filling in those voids and you're facilitating more conversation, and you're saying, hey, Jim, you're interested in cars. Dan just bought a new Maserati. Talk amongst yourselves. So that role of being the community manager is really intense, and it needs to be someone who not only understands social media, but who understands relationship building of the type you would do at a dinner party. So I love that analogy, and now I have shared it with you. I'll just go ahead and give you a few notes wrapping up. One thing is, Dan and I are going to be doing a webinar in January, and we plan to do a series of these webinars on an ongoing basis. But in January, we've got one that we're going to be announcing very shortly. And the topic is going to be healthcare marketing as community building. And it's going to talk about the use of online communities. And we're going to give examples of communities that we've built. And we're going to flip roles, and Dan's going to be the moderator, and he will introduce me, and I will do the presentation. And I look forward to sharing, real examples of online communities, from the most simple Facebook community and a simple patient community to more complex communities with multiple sub-communities within them. So we look forward to doing that in January. So look for news about that. We're going to send you a follow-up email after today's webinar. And in it, there'll be a link to the recording of this webinar. So hopefully you can share it with friends and colleagues and listen to it again if you'd like. And then look for the email that Dan mentioned earlier, where he's going to send you an email with his list of 20 essential questions to ask potential members of your online patient community. And I think that's just invaluable. I think the biggest takeaway today for me is be strategic. If you're going to go down this road, be strategic in the way you approach it. You need to answer the business questions of, why are you doing this? Why is this important? What do you hope to accomplish? What are your goals? And you need to be patient, most of all. We launched my firm Jennings launched a new online patient community for a healthcare client about 2 or 3 months ago, and it's really slow. I mean, it is like pulling teeth to get people to join the community, to get them involved. People don't naturally just want to be joiners. They don't naturally want to comment on things. So you have to create the environment, and that takes work. But it really is about creating environments where people feel safe commenting, where they feel safe sharing ideas. And often you have to show them that kind of behavior. You have to model it, and they see other people sharing information. They say, oh, wow, this is that kind of place. I can do that. It's just like on your Facebook pages for your organizations. People don't naturally feel like they're going to comment. They don't mind liking because it doesn't take much effort. You aren't really putting yourself out there. But commenting, you're really putting yourself out there, and that's the kind of engagement we need. And to get that, you have to create the environment where people feel comfortable doing it. So thank you very much for coming to the webinar today. If you have any questions, I know Dan would be happy to field any questions via email. So feel free to reach out to him by email or through Twitter or any other, even old-fashioned telephone. So thank you again. We appreciate it, and have a great rest of the day.